The 11th meeting of the 23rd Council will please come to order. All council members are present this evening. At this time, we will have a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance, which will be led by Councilor Borrego. And during that moment of silence, let's keep in our prayers and our thoughts Jennifer Reardon, who lost her life on Flight 1380 and was a prominent member of our community. And also over the weekend, we lost Mayor Larry Abraham from the village of Los Ranchos. The flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Councilor Borrego. Civic Plaza parking passes are provided for members of the public. You can obtain a parking pass from the council staff at the sign-up table. We want tonight's proceedings to be as civil and as respectful as possible. Please do not make any personal attacks, and please no applause or outbursts during the meeting. The meeting will go much smoother if we are respectful of one another. At this time, we will go to item 3, which is proclamations and presentations. And the first proclamation will be read by Councilor Borrego and myself, and I will turn it over to Councilor Borrego to introduce members that are here tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the City Council. Tonight, we have a proclamation for National Military Appreciation Month. And I would like to ask Mr. Larry Campos from the Department of Veterans Affairs, on behalf of the Cabinet Secretary, Captain Harold Pope, who is active duty military, and Mr. Joseph Dorn, also from the Department of Veterans Affairs, to come forward, please. Thank you for being here this evening on short notice. Appreciate that very much. Mr. Pope and Mr. Dorn are both constituents from District 5, so I'm happy especially to have constituents here. Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilor. And the proclamation reads, whereas in 1999 Congress declared May is National Military Appreciation Month, a time to observe and honor the sacrifices of the United States Armed Forces. And whereas during the month of May, we recognize Loyalty Day, VE Day, the end of World War II in Europe on May the 8th of 1945, Armed Forces Day, Military Spouses Day, and Memorial Day. And whereas the month of May lends us a time to recognize the men and women serving in active duty in all branches of the services, the National Guard and Reserves, plus retirees, veterans, and all of their families. And whereas this month gives the nation a time and place on which to focus and draw attention to well over 90 million Americans and more than 230 years of our nation's military history. And Councilor Borrego?
And whereas so many men and women dedicated themselves for our freedom and sacrificed time with their families to proudly serve in the United States military, and whereas in the month of May and every day of the year, we need to remember and honor those who made the ultimate sacrifice while serving our country, and whereas as a nation, need to share our expressions of appreciation and recognition of our armed services and the role models they serve for all of us. Be it proclaimed that the City Council, the governing body of the City of Albuquerque, hereby recognizes May as National Military Appreciation Month. And we have a proclamation for you, and we would like to ask if you would say a few words for us tonight.
Mr. President, Councilman Borrego, it is my honor and privilege to represent Cabinet Secretary Jack Fox on his behalf. We're are proud that the City of Albuquerque has taken this time to proclaim the month of May as Veterans Month. It is also my honor and privilege to pledge that we continue to support and help all the veterans and their families in our surrounding communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to make a comment?
I didn't have anything prepared, but I would just like to thank the council stationed at Kirtland Air Force Base. I think this city is tied to Kirtland and what we do, so I think the folks on the base are appreciative of this honor. Thanks.
We'd like you to come up and receive your proclamation.
Very nice to meet you. Thank you. Mr. Chair,
We have one more proclamation, and that proclamation is recognizing Mental Health Awareness Month. The proclamation will be received by Anna Romero. Would you please come down? And reading that proclamation will be Councilor Borrego.
and I believe she has a guest with her also who we need to introduce. Annie, would you like to introduce your guest?
Yes, this is Bea Chavez, and she is the president of the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention chapter here in New Mexico.
Thank you. Okay, all right. Good evening, everyone. Today, the proclamation reads, whereas the mental health and well-being of people in the United States is a critical issue affecting quality of life and the health of communities, families, and economic stability, while the stigma associated with mental health continues to persist, and whereas according to the U.S. Surgeon General, more than 57 million people in the United States suffer from mental health illnesses, and approximately 1 in 5 children may have a diagnosable mental disorder, and 5 to 9% of youth ages 9 to 17 in New Mexico have serious emotional disturbances and may not receive the support they need to reach their full potential at home, school, and in their communities. And whereas more than a quarter of the members of the United States Armed Forces suffer from psychological or neurological injuries, and whereas 37% of homeless adults in Albuquerque self-reported serious mental illness in the point-in-time count in one night, and whereas major mental illness costs businesses and the national economy over, let's see if I can say this, $193 billion per year in lost earnings. In 2005, the New Mexico legislature appropriated $1,250,000 for non-medical inpatient psychiatric services. And whereas mental illness leads to high costs associated with suicide, and the New Mexico suicide rate is 72% higher than the United States in the United States for people 16 to 21, and 1 in 4 Latina adolescents report seriously contemplating suicide, and Native Americans currently rank as the top ethnicity for suicide rates nationwide. And suicide is the second leading cause of death for New Mexicans ages 10 to 44, and the 8th leading cause of death overall in New Mexico. Be it proclaimed that the council, the governing body of the city of Albuquerque, hereby recognizes May as Mental Health Month. Would you like to say some words?
Sure. President Sanchez and members of the council, just thank you so much for having us be here today. I'm going to go ahead and let Bea start by saying a few words, and then she didn't know she was going to say anything, but we like to surprise her every now and then.
Thank you for having us. I'm a survivor of a suicide. I lost my dad, and that's how I got involved with AFSP. And thank you for realizing how important mental health is. He's struggled with mental health and addiction for a very long time. And so the outcome is suicide. So in September, we have a big walk. So I challenge each one of you up there to join us for the walk for the Out of the Darkness. So thank you.
And I would just like to add that May Mental Health Month has been a personal thing that I have really worked on since I started this advocacy work 14 years ago here in our home state of New Mexico. And the administration at the national level at the time had said, if you get every state in the country to recognize May as National Mental Health Awareness Month, that they would then formally declare it as part of the administration. And advocacy groups from all over the country attempted this and didn't get close to all 50 states. And so when I went to work on Capitol Hill, I oversaw the Congressional Mental Health Caucus. And this was the personal issue that I attempted to champion. And with my boss, Congresswoman Grace Napolitano, we were able to establish this in conjunction with the White House. President Obama is the first president to declare formally May as National Mental Health Awareness Month. And as a New Mexican, to be so far away from home and now back home, this is something that I think is critically important for us to continue the work. And as you read those sobering statistics, we have a lot of work to do, but I believe we have the right focus. We have the right people in place. I think we have a key administration that supports this initiative. And with many of you that are sitting on the dais today, I know that you all feel that this is a critically important issue as well. And so we'd just like to thank you for your support and ask that you, as you continue to move forward in policy initiatives within our community, that you keep the behavioral health focus at the forefront, because it actually is a issue that impacts so much of what we face in our community. And just in conclusion, we would like to thank Councilor Borrego for, she had zero hesitation when approached to discussing this issue and to sponsoring the legislation. And for those of us that work in the behavioral health community, it really just solidifies that we have moved so far from the stigma, and it's critically important that we have elected officials that support these initiatives. So thank you so much, Councilor Borrego, and to all of you who have supported mental health in the past on this initiatives as well. So thank you.
Would you like to come forward and receive the
Before she
proclamation?
comes forward, Councilor Borrego, Councilor Davis has a comment or a question.
I just want to acknowledge and thank you, Councilor, for doing this. Ms. Romero, we're grateful and lucky to have you from New Mexico and for all of your leadership on this nationally. I think people don't know the full breadth of the work that you did on the national level to work on these issues, and we're incredibly lucky for that, all of us, but more importantly, we're lucky to have you back to be leading that work here at home. So thank you for stepping up to do that for us as well.
Thank you, Mr. Romero. B, you guys want to come forward and receive the proclamation? Next on the agenda, we have a presentation by Chris Sylvan regarding the CPC status update, which is the Community Policing Council. Welcome, Mr. Sylvan. Go and proceed.
Thank you, Counselor. Good evening. My name is Chris Sylvan. I'm the Community Outreach Manager with the Albuquerque Police Department. Tonight I'm going to give you an update on the Community Policing Councils. What is a Community Policing Council, or a CPC? Community Policing Councils are designed to foster better policing and community practices and community police relationships. The goal of each Community Policing Council is to engage in candid, detailed, and meaningful dialogue between Albuquerque police and the citizens they serve. There are 6 Community Policing Councils in the city of Albuquerque. The monthly meetings provide a place where you can hear a variety of different topics. For example, one CPC had a judge from the Court of Appeals speak. Another CPC had the 911 call center director speak, and the district attorney, Raul Torres, has made appearance at several CPCs. Our police department divides the city into 6 area commands. Our community policing councils are divided up the same way. That is, a policing council corresponds to the area command in which it lies. The community meetings take place in a community center or a multi-gen center. If you're a resident or a business owner, you should go to the Community Policing Council website and find out what area command you live in so you can attend the monthly meetings. One of the jobs of the voting members of our CPCs is to make recommendations to our police department and also to take recommendations from members of the audience, because if you attend a CPC, you become a member of that CPC. The voting members will take your contact information and let you know about future meetings and upcoming events. The CPCs are independent of the city. One recommendation that the CPCs made was to have a condensed Citizens of Police Academy. That academy was 12 weeks long, and the CPCs made a recommendation for 2 weekends. How are we doing? Well, according to the CASA, we are required to meet twice a year, and we are exceeding that because we are meeting monthly. Voting membership is up, attendance is up, and Steve Rickman, who's with the Independent Monitor, Dr. Ginger's team, says that the CPCs are moving in the right direction. We also have become the national model for policing councils that other cities look to when they want to do this kind of work. Just Google community policing councils, and the first hit you will see is Albuquerque. I just wanted to show you a graphic from the period ending April 30th from 2016, 2017, and 2018. In 2016, we only had 2 applications for the CPC councils. In 2017, we've had 17, and in 2018, we've had a whopping 28 applicants. So evidently, we're getting the message out there about our CPCs, and I hope to further that. If you have any questions, our website is www.cabq, Police Community Council. You can write to us at apdcpc@cabq.gov. Or you can use my email address, that's csylvan@cabq.gov, 768-2232. Thank you, and I stand for questions.
Councilor Davis.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Sylvan, it's good to see you on that side of the podium. It's fun to do questions this way. Thank you.
Wonderful.
I wanted to follow up on a couple of things that we had discussed at a Southeast Community Police Council meeting earlier. One of the questions we had was about, as we see the number of applications that are coming into our CPCs increase and they get bigger, do you know or have data or whether the persons that are serving or applying to serve represent the diversity of our city, or are they skewed in one way or the other, or do we have data yet on being sure that we have equal representation there?
Councilor Sanchez, Councilor Davis. Yes, we do have data. We've just started tracking this data. It's very preliminary right now. I think we've only tracked it since March. So once we get more data in, we will see that if the applicants are skewed to represent our cultural diversity in this city.
I appreciate that. And Mr. President, if I could follow and just ask, Chris, could you tell us, some of the questions we've heard early on about the qualifications for CPCs were that some of the higher standards, particularly around prior convictions or prior engagement with the criminal justice system, might exclude some people from participating. And I think there is a real concern, at least early on, that some of the people we want to participate in our community police councils are folks who have gone through the criminal justice process, have reformed, come back, and are contributing to the community to try to prevent people otherwise. Can you tell me, if you know, sort of what are the qualifications relating to prior convictions, recidivism, probation, parole, completion, any of that? And do we have people in our CPCs yet who have gone through the criminal justice process and are returning to serve or can help us on that side of the system as well?
Councilor Sanchez, Councilor Davis, to answer your question, yes. I do believe that there's like a couple of applicants who have gone through what you described, and I encouraged them to continue to serve on the community policing councils, and I reached out to several underserved groups. I would love to see people who have had trouble with law enforcement coming to serve on these councils. In fact, one of the strategies that I've been employing, I've actually gone down to healthcare for the homeless and recruited from their area, because somebody who's been on the street, maybe they would be better to serve on a community policing council to express to our community and the police department what it's like to be just living on the edge like that.
I want to commend you, Chris. I think, Mr. Sullivan, I think you're leading this is great because you and I have talked about this and I've seen you doing that. I think that's a really important step in the right direction as we make these bigger, is to welcome in voices who think that they may not have a place at the table, and you've been doing it, and I appreciate that. I think that's absolutely critical to rebuilding trust with all the community. So thanks for working on that, and I look forward to those reports when we get them.
Councilor Sanchez, Councilor Davis, thank you.
Councilor Gibson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Sylvan, it's good to see you again. We're really proud. I'm really proud of you and everything that you've done to help the PCPs. And I hear really good things about them. I try to go as often as I can, which is not very often, I admit, but I'm going to try to be better about that. So, but I do have a question. You said something, and maybe I misheard you. I very possibly did not hear you correctly. I thought you said that they're required to meet twice a year, but it seems like they meet monthly, or the councils, police councils.
Councilor Sanchez, Councilor Gibson, yes, they are required to meet twice a year, but they're exceeding that, and the independent monitor is very happy about that.
Good. So are all of the PCPs, CPCs, are they all meeting that often, like once a month or every 6 weeks, something like that?
Councilor Sanchez, Councilor Gibson, the only time that one of the CPCs has not met, or two of them have not met since I've been in the job, is once because there was a summit. The Southwest CPC did not meet. The mayor showed up at a summit, and that was the first time a mayor has ever showed up at a CPC meeting or summit. And the other time was the Valley CPC. They didn't have a quorum, but yet at the same time they showed up and had a meeting and there was discussion.
Mm-hmm. Well, that really demonstrates a high level of commitment. And also, I think the administration had something. Ms. Nair?
Council President Sanchez, Councilor Gibson, I just wanted to, well, first thank you, Councilor Gibson, for letting us have Mr. Sylvan and for recommending him highly. He has exceeded all of our expectations. I also wanted to say that since you all know him, he is kind of understating the amount of work he has done to turn around these CPCs, so I want to sort of give him full credit and give the councils full credit for what they've accomplished. So they actually came to the administration to speak about their own diversity problems. That's how acute the membership was skewed in one particular direction. And Mr. Sylvan, working with Mr. Lewis and working with our community policing personnel, have really worked very hard to proactively outreach on social media, in person, at clergy, at community events, to make those a broader base. And Steve Rickman, who's part of our monitoring team, is one of the elder statesmen of police reform and of community involvement in police reform. And last time he was in town, he took me aside to say, Albuquerque will be the model for the rest of the country to follow when it comes to community engagement and reform if we keep down the path that Mr. Sylvan and Mr. Lewis and Chief Geyer have us on. So just wanted to make sure he got his full credit while he was up here.
Councilor Borrego, then Councilor Benton.
I wanted to thank Chris for being here this evening. I was actually the person who asked that we have a report for the public so that we could sort of engage the public more in sort of the whole network of community policing. And I guess the question that I wanted to ask you, Chris, well, two questions actually. The first one is with regard to neighborhood associations and how they network with the Community Policing Council. And then the second one, and I'm not sure that we have that yet, but we may, is how business organizations network with the Community Policing Council, because I think that, you know, we're all in this together, and having those very tight networks is going to help us sort of get a handle on crime, because the police can't do it obviously all by themselves. So I just wondered about the neighborhood associations' involvements with community policing councils, and then the second question regarding business associations.
Councilor Sanchez, Councilor Borrego, the neighborhood associations are involved with the community policing councils by some of the councils having their bylaws that the council members attend the neighborhood association meetings, and that's how they're getting the word out, the council, to the neighborhood associations. As far as the business associations, to be honest with you, I've only reached out to a few individuals. Mr. Lewis is reaching more to the the business community and the UNM association because his ties are, I don't want to say much higher than mine, but at the time, but in a way he has those relationships. I'm just starting to form them and nurture them. I learned a lot of them on council, but at the same time, Mr. Lewis is a quicker approach to get there.
Thank you. I just, and the reason that I bring that up is because I had some company recently from Texas who was robbed at a local business, and before we knew it, they were at Best Buy using their credit card to the tune of $12,000. And it took like 15 minutes for them to be out from one business using the credit cards at another business. And I understand that there are models or at least applications that are being used in other communities to sort of network the businesses. So I just wanted to raise that issue because I think it's something that maybe in the future we can look to with our police department, is how do we sort of get businesses to start networking as well, and alerted that maybe somebody has, that has committed a crime in one business, that quickly can be at another business. So I raise that issue, only more of a challenge is that we look to other cities for possibly applications that they're using or technology. So thank you so much for being here this evening.
Sure. Thank you.
We also have a question from Councilor Benton.
Mr. Sullivan, sort of just a suggestion and not a question, but first of all, thanks for all the good work, and it's nice to have one of our own move up the food chain and lead the way you're doing, so we really appreciate that. I guess with regard to recruiting CPC members, I would just suggest that it sounds like you're doing all the right things. The big challenge, as you know, that we often have is getting people from more working family kind of neighborhoods where people are holding down 2 and 3 jobs. It's very hard to get somebody to give up their spare time in that kind of a situation. And we know that we have a lot of neighborhoods like that throughout the city. So, there's also a list of pretty strong community advocates we have in town outside of neighborhood associations. And, I'm always trying to think of ways to engage them and get them to kind of be our front, to some extent with those kind of neighborhoods. And they may not be able to get that single mom that has 2 jobs or whatever, but they could at least get her neighbor or somebody who can help represent her. So just a thought about that. And having had all these discussions in my own neighborhood, and people who come out and complain, but they haven't really had a chance to understand the system.
Councilor Sanchez, Councilor Benton, I've actually taken steps to head that direction. I don't think there should be a barrier to attend these meetings, and I'm looking at creative ways of trying to make sure that people can attend the meetings. For example, I'm trying to work with Family and Community Services to provide childcare to the people who want to attend the meeting, but they can't attend it. So I know I just launched that initiative here at council, and it's not fully solidified, but at the same time, I've had that discussion with the Family and Community Services. So I don't think there should be any barriers to attend, and this is our city and this is our police department, and we have a chance to change it.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilor. And I have one comment, no question. I want to also thank those members that are currently serving and that have served on the CPCs. It's taken a lot of their time, but they're willing to serve and make the police department a better place and a better community. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Sylvan.
Thank you.
Okay, we are now under item 4, economic development discussion. There is none this evening. We are now under item 5, that is administrative question and answers period. Councilors, are there any questions for the administration? Councilor Davis?
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to follow up, and I appreciate the proclamation tonight recognizing our military this month. Ms. Nair, or perhaps for somebody else from the administration, we've been working a little while to look for someone to be the city's new Veterans Liaison, and I know we've been meeting with folks at the Veterans Memorial for a while and Veterans Advisory Board, but I understand we have good news and that we have a new Veteran Liaison for the city.
Council President Sanchez, Councilor Davis, yes, that's right. We are very happy that Thomas Tozier joined us in Constituent Services. He served in the United States Army and Army Reserve. He also worked for the U.S. Forest Service immediately before joining our staff. So he is full-time in Constituent Services and able to work specifically on veterans issues. Also, just to tie together the two proclamations that we had tonight, we do have a SAMHSA-supported Veteran Suicide Prevention and Awareness working group that the City of Albuquerque is taking a leadership role in. Ellen Braden in Family and Community Services has really spearheaded that. So you'll hear more about that in the weeks to come during Mental Health Awareness Month.
And thank you, Mr. President. I just want to follow up. That was something we started just as the new administration was coming in out of our council office, and I appreciate y'all picking up the ball and running with it. It could be a really big deal for us, so thank you very much. Thanks, Mr. President.
Councilor Pena.
Thank you, Mr. President. I should have called on this, but I just have been so darn busy. But I just wanted to know if anyone's heard about that there was a young man who was injured at Montesa. Does anyone know how he's doing? An employee.
An employee, Councilor, Mr. President and Councilor, the two individuals, if you're talking about the incident that occurred last week, yes. Two individuals in our open space division were unfortunately hurt while loading a piece of equipment on a trailer. One of the individuals suffered some extensive damage to his hand, went to the hospital and was released. The other individual, a veteran of City Hall for many years, unfortunately has some more extensive injuries, has been in the hospital at UNMH. The mayor went and I went to visit with him and visited with his family. He has injuries that require surgery, not life-threatening as I understand, but this happened again last week, and so we understand that he's going through the surgeries, et cetera, but we'll get you more detailed information as we get it.
Mr. President, thank you. I would appreciate that. You know, I don't know who they are. Or I just received several calls, so I was just concerned. So thank you for the update.
You're welcome.
Are there any other questions for the administration? If not, I've got one. At the last budget hearing meeting, we talked about 1,040 officers that we were going to budget for. We didn't talk about how many officers are retiring. Do we have any of those numbers, or how many have left in the last 6 months?
Council President Sanchez, I don't have those numbers with me. I can tell you that when we looked over the past few years, we saw a net decrease of 6 officers per year. That's when you offset recruiting with retirement and people leaving for other reasons other than retirement. And so when we talk about getting to 1040, we're talking about overcoming that negative deficit and then moving up.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. Thank you. Any other questions? See none, let's go and proceed. We are on item 6 of the journal. Council Vice President Harris.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move approval of the April 16th journal.
We have a motion and a second for approval of the April 16th journal. Any questions? See none, all those in favor signify by saying yes. Yes, those opposed say no. That carries unanimously. We are now under item 7, communications and introductions. Are there any changes to the letter of introductions? I move that the rules be suspended for the purpose of placing EC 118 on tonight's agenda for final action. EC 118 is approving an agreement with New Mexico Bioscience Authority to create a bioscience, community bioscience ready program. This will require 2/3 votes. Do I have a second? We have a motion and a second by Councilor Benton. Any questions? See none, all those in favor signify by saying yes. Yes, those opposed say no. That carries unanimously. Councilor Harris.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move approval of the letter of introduction.
We have a motion and a second for the letter of introduction. Any questions? See none, all those in favor signify by saying yes. Yes, those opposed say no. That carries unanimously. Reports and committees, there is none this evening. We are now under deferrals and withdrawals. Councilors, are there any deferrals or withdrawals at this time? I've got a deferral from approvals, and that is OC-6, selection of the city auditor. I move deferral until the May 21st meeting. We have a motion and a second by Council Vice President Harris. Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying yes. Yes, those opposed say no. That carries unanimously. We are now under deferrals from final actions. Councilor Harris.
Thank you. Regarding O45, amending chapters 1 and 2, ROA 1994, and add a new article, et cetera, I move deferral until June 4th.
We have a motion and a second to defer item O-45 until June the 4th. Any questions? See none. All those in favor signify by saying yes. Yes, those opposed say no. That carries unanimously. Counselor Gibson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. On committee substitute 3, 0-50, O-50 rather, amending the City of Albuquerque Code of Ordinances, Article 6, in Chapter 13, ROA 1994, the pawnbroker ordinance. I move that the rules be suspended for the purpose of extending the expiration of O-50 by 6 months and deferring it to the August 6th council meeting.
We have a motion and a second for deferral. Counselor Harris.
Yes, and I'm going to vote for this, but I just want to be clear that one of the reasons why this is getting deferred is because some councilors wanted a economic impact analysis when the industry and the police department and the councilor couldn't quite come to a compromise. But I want to be clear about the economic impact analysis. First of all, when is that likely to be done? Do you know, Mr. Zaban?
Mr. President, Councilor Harris, we're in discussions with Bieber now about the scope of their analysis and about what they are able to do and what they're not able to do given the subject matter. We expect a final proposal from Bieber in the next week or so, and I would imagine after that it will be 6 weeks before the study's completed.
Okay, and one of the things that there was some concern about is that the pawnbrokers could show an economic loss, I guess, by losing ill-gotten gains or by losing profits from selling stolen property. And I just want to be very clear that that is not something that I think the city should be concerned about, that if the pawnbrokers need to sell stolen property in order to make a profit, then that's kind of too bad from my point of view. So, you know, is that going to be clear in the economic analysis that that the city isn't really concerned about pawnbrokers losing out on sales of stolen property, that I'm just concerned about the pawnbrokers being able to make a profit if they're not selling stolen property?
Mr. President, Councilor Harris, in our discussions with Bieber, we were making no value judgments about the dollar amounts changing either way. I think the way that Bieber is going to approach this, rather than trying to quantify the amount that we have a very, very small sample of pawnbrokers in the city in order to, not a sufficient amount to make any large conclusion or draw any conclusions specifically about. So rather than looking specifically at the amount and saying pawnbrokers are likely to lose 9% of their revenue in Albuquerque, what they're going to do is they're going to do a national study and say, based on national examples with thousands of pawnbroker shops and regulation all across the country, we believe that pawnbrokers in Albuquerque are likely to lose X percent of their business. And then on the converse side, they're going to try to do a national search to determine the benefits to the society of putting a damper on one of the outlets for property crime fencing.
Okay, but it sounds like that we might not have this firm actually looking at if they're going to lose 9% of the revenue, is that 9% of revenue that is mostly from sources that we really don't want. That's not the kind of business that we want pawnbrokers to be engaging in anyway.
Right, and we're in discussion with them. We're going to get their proposal back hopefully this week, and we'll mention that, and we'll make sure that we'll ask them whether or not they believe they're able to distinguish between how much of that X percent was ill-gotten gain from fencing illegally stolen items, and how much was, I think, the concern was expressed in committee, how much is legal activity that might be deterred because of enhanced identification requirements.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor that the rules be suspended for the purpose of extending the expiration of O-50 by 6 months and deferring it to the August 6th council meeting. All those in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Yes. Those opposed say no. That carries unanimously. We are now under the consent agenda. Are there any changes to the consent agenda? Councilor Benton.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to pull item B, EC 1894, from the consent agenda.
Counselor Harris.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move approval of the consent agenda as modified.
We have a motion and a second for the consent agenda. All those in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Those opposed say no. That carries unanimously. Counselor Benton, item B.
Thank you, Mr. President. For the purpose of discussion, I'll move a receipt be noted on EC 1894. Councilors, this is a project, I think, in Councilor Gibson's district. Sometimes we see these street vacations. They're usually an alley or some small vestige of a street somewhere. This is a major parcel at a major intersection in the city, Eubank and Manal. Apparently containing 6.7 acres, according to the report. So significant piece of public land, which is being proposed to be vacated and for the benefit of a private development. So I don't know how many of you are familiar with this. Is this the one where, is this the Breaking Bad car wash curve? And what was it, Brian O'Brien's, one of my favorite hangouts back in the day, I think, was there. But regardless of all that history, I just wanted to point out something that's in the staff comments that I think it's important to point out, and that is some language in our comprehensive plan that discourages right-of-way vacations. Now, I think when they said that, they probably, they may or may not have had anything of this magnitude in mind, but that part of the comprehensive plan enacted in 2017 had a goal under 6.2 multimodal system of transportation chapter, page 641, improve connectivity to provide route options and decrease the distance to services for all users. And by reinforcing the street grid, providing pedestrian access points, and discouraging right-of-way vacations. This is kind of the reason, I think, that years ago, I mean, I was the sponsor of that when we created this requirement that they come before council. And the history of this also goes back to a previous vacation. So this was actually vacated by the DRB, or approved for vacation by the DRB several years back, 2005, and the applicants failed to get the approval of everyone involved, and the approval of vacation has since expired. Also, the record of this vacation shows that they do not yet have the concurrence of all the players in this immediate area. So we're really creating one more slug of work for ourselves and maybe a future one if they don't have that done. So I was surprised to see that after the previous one expired because they couldn't get consensus among the stakeholders, that we're now coming back and they still don't have consensus among the stakeholders. So I hate to see the city be taken around in a goat rope again and again on something like this. But that's just those are my concerns, those are my questions. I'm not opposed to it or in favor of it until I find out differently. Thank you.
Mr. President, Councilor Benton, to clarify, the reason that the 2005 request expired is because the property was never replatted. Once you vacate a piece of right-of-way, you have to go back and replat the property, and that was never done. The letter submitted by the applicant stated that was because of economic reasons, and they feel they're in a better place that they can actually pursue the development here. I'd like to note that Mr. Bohannon is here this evening, who is the applicant for this request, so if you have questions, he is available to answer them.
Before we do that, was he the agent on the previous one as well?
Mr. President, Councilor Benton, I'm not sure. He's nodding. Yes, he was.
All right. Well, sure, Mr. Bohannon, if you would, Mr. Chair.
Bohannon, go ahead and proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Councilor Benton, this is actually our third time that we will have vacated Snow Heights Circle. The last time, 2005, we had this little thing called the 2006-2007 recession that kind of put everything on hold. The trust who owns the property actually bought O'Brien's and Bryan's property and is incorporated into that. We don't have written concurrence, we have verbal concurrence of all the property owners in there. Mr. Car Wash is actually working out a memorandum of understanding between those two. And this vacation is also fairly critical to the city of Albuquerque's fire department's development of the parcel up off of Manal. We have met with the fire department as well as their design team, and they are going to utilize all of the vacated portion of this area. From connectivity standpoint, this actually does a couple things. One is it reduces a very high speed turn. So from a traffic standpoint, this really improves traffic circulation. We will update our TIS showing the turning movements don't do anything, but from a connectivity standpoint, we're actually going to connect all of those businesses that are on that little island now with the proposed promenade development as well as all of the car wash. So we think this is a very good project, a good vacation project. I've done many vacations as the council knows. We think this project is good in its time for the redevelopment of this area. It's sat vacant for a number of years.
So, Mr. President.
Proceed, Councilor Harris.
So you have got Speedy Glass now on board. I'm just reading the staff report. At that time, it was not.
Speedy Glass, we've been trying to get Speedy Glass on board. They did not object to the vacation through that action after we met with them. They did not object to the vacation. We were just trying to get written concurrence from them.
Okay. And is that right? We're talking about a total of 6 point some odd acres. The city will be compensated for that based on prevailing property values, correct?
Yes, we've actually been in touch with Real Property Management with Scott Howell, and they're starting the valuation process now through that whole process. But we actually started that once we were past the DRB process.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. President.
Council Vice President Harris, and then Councilor Gibson.
Thank you, Mr. Bohannon, and maybe Shannon can answer this question if you can't, but what is the term for that road that kind of cuts off a corner? Because I heard that in terms of a street design, that's not really done very often, and it's kind of frowned upon. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes, it's. I don't think there's a technical term for it. It was made in the 60s when actually Hoffmantown and this was the other corner that did that. Since then, traffic engineers don't promote this type of development at all for traffic circulation.
And is this are they still looking at the Snow Heights Promenade, that development? Is that what's going to go there?
Yes.
Okay, and going back, I guess, as prior to 2000, I know Sally Maillet was on the council, and that area, which is going to be the Snow Heights Promenade, I think the city entered into some sort of friendly condemnation, and we flattened that little strip mall. Is that right?
We did. Actually, that was a Piggly Wiggly store that when I was growing up off of Eubank and Moon, I visited as an 8-year-old. So yes, it was a very old shopping center. It had, the fire department used it as training, actually conducted fires and demolition on it through that whole area. And the property owner paid for that.
And so how long has that property been, which is sort of on this strange little cut-through road that traffic engineers don't like to promote anymore, how long has that property been vacant and unused after the city demolished it?
It was vacant at roughly around 2006 timeframe. At that time, we were looking at a Home Depot on that site. Since then, Home Depot's only built like 50 stores nationwide through that area. So it's been vacant since 2006.
And looking on the website for the Snow Heights Promenade, can you describe that development? That's first of all, the feasibility of that actually happening, because I saw a press release that said that broke ground, but I haven't seen any ground moving. And what's going to be there?
So what we're looking at is some entertainment-related restaurant uses. We have a trampoline park that's signed. We actually have approximately 50% of the sites leased up. And actually, the financial funding is available for this site. that's how I'm getting paid. So,
And thank you. And Counselor, this is right on the edge of my district. It's actually in Counselor Gibson's district, but I mean, that area of the Northeast Heights is kind of in a transition, and I think this would be a great addition, so.
we think it's a great redevelopment project for that area.
Counselor Gibson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Bohannon, I'm really glad you're here tonight to field those questions. Thank you for being here. And I just wanted to offer a little reassurance regarding the firehouse, the new firehouse that's going over there, which is the vacant piece of property just to the northwest of the car wash there. But they, meaning Chief Downey, before he left, and Chief Dow have been very much supportive of this and believe that it will make this improve the site for the use of the fire station. So, so that's really all I have to offer. Except I do have some clarification. Is it typical to only have a verbal approval for this?
No.
I mean, that seems kind of shaky.
You have a chicken and egg situation. You have to go through the process, and usually through the process, we've made contact with everybody. If they had objections, they would have, and all of them were at the DRB hearing the initial vacation action. Nobody objected to that vacation action. Speedy Glass, CVS Pharmacy, and Palo Alto. Palo Alto is signing the letter, CVS is getting the letter, and we're trying to push through on Speedy Glass.
Okay. All right, very good. Thank you.
Counselor Davis.
Just really quickly, Mr. President, I see Mr. Campbell sitting on the edge of his seat and like bouncing out to say something. I want to be sure we include our planning director if there's something to add.
Director Campbell.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Councilor Davis. As good as Ron is, he's not a City of Albuquerque employee. I am, and we have supported this. We supported it in 2005. We support it now. It is for all of those reasons. And I'll add, if you've ever driven that area from west or eastbound Manal to southbound Eubank, or tried to drive out of the car wash, the famous Breaking Bad car wash, you know that that's a very treacherous place. You're very proud of your clean car, but you may get it crashed by cars going southbound. So for a number of reasons, we think that this is a very positive development to be rid of that potential hazard and to have it in productive use.
And so I think you just answered my question, but Mr. Campbell, just to be clear, it's your position in the planning department's decision that this vacation will allow this site to be used for development and make the neighborhood better?
Mr. President and Councilor Davis, yes, indeed, that we endorse this.
Counselor Benton.
I think I may have made the wrong motion. Is this a be approved?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I'll change the motion to be approved.
We have a motion and a second by Council Vice President Harris for approval of EC 18-94. All those in favor signify by saying yes. Yes. All those opposed say no. That carries unanimously, and no Piggly Wiggly. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to the next item, which is general public comments. There will be a 2-minute time limit. The light at the podium will be green for the first minute and a half. Then a bell will ring and a light will turn yellow, indicating you have 30 seconds remaining to wrap up your comments. At the 2-minute time limit, the bell will turn red, meaning your time has expired, and please respect the 2-minute time limit. I will call the first 6 speakers up. They're seating at the front and be prepared to speak. The first speaker this evening is Don Schrader, followed by Miguel Alvarez, Gino Klum, Bill McComley, Lynn Anderson, and Cody Slama.
I strongly compliment many Jews in the United States and in Israel for publicly damning the Israeli government's brutal oppression and mass murder of Palestinians. U.S. tax dollars buy the tanks, guns, helicopters, bulldozers, missiles the Israeli military uses to terrorize, cripple, paralyze, make homeless, and murder Palestinians. The Israeli military has killed hundreds of Palestinian boys and girls and has wounded thousands more. The U.S. empire has also supported for decades corrupt, bloody dictatorships in Egypt, Jordan, and Saudi Arabia in order to control the region because of USAN's addiction to oil. I support peace and human rights for all people in Israel and in Palestine. Revenge and more violence are not the answer for Israelis. Revenge and more violence are not the answer for Palestinians. I have paid no U.S. federal income tax for 39 years. I refuse to pay for Israel to rob, torture, and massacre Palestinians. I've ridden in no car for 17 years, greatly reducing my use of oil. I support the nonviolent campaign to boycott Israel and to remove investments there. I know of no Israeli Jew who would prefer living as a Palestinian in the West Bank or Gaza.
Thank you, Don. Next speaker, Miguel Alvarez, followed by Gino Klum. Welcome.
Evening. Today I'm going to talk about the war between Japan and the United States. A lot of people don't realize that when we were in the war with Japan, everybody from the U.S., including soldiers from New Mexico, plus a lot of people from Mexico and Cuba, joined the war with our uniforms for our war against Japan. And while we were out in war, a lot of people that were here in the United States were dying, starving, because farmers and cattle ranchers did not have people to take care of their cattle or their farms. So the United States, under this emergency, sent a lot of buses to Mexico to bring a lot of Mexicans into the United States to support the United States under this situation. And the thank you that we gave all these people for helping us is handcuffing them, tying them up like animals and sending them back to Mexico. And that's not right. And if you want to really investigate what I am saying, it's in every book of the United States during the war with Japan. And now that it's a veteran monthly celebration or saying thank you to the veterans, if my dad and my uncles would be alive due to the fact that they got caught with a death march, baton death march, they would tell you the same. When I was in the military for 15 years, there was a lot of people from Mexico, Cuba, Guatemala that were in the U.S. Army uniforms. And the thank you that we have for them, again, is tying them up like animals and sending them back to their country. I really feel that we should give them a break due to the fact that we do not have a workforce. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Alvarez. Thank you for your service also. Gino Klum. Bill McComley.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you. Members of the council, my name is Bill McCamley. I'm a state representative actually from Las Cruces. And the reason I made the 6-hour round trip today is that I am a co-sponsor in the legislature, along with Representative Debbie Armstrong, of the End-of-Life Options Act, which you will be voting on a resolution for later today. The reason that I am involved and the reason that Representative Armstrong is involved is we both have personal stories. My father was a 25-year veteran of the Army. In 2010, he was diagnosed with a terminal disease, and it took him 4 years to pass away. But when he was diagnosed, my family had a talk, and he was able to sign an advance directive. And luckily for him, he wasn't in pain, so he never had to go through any of the things that we'd be talking about with the End-of-Life Options Act. But he had lung cancer 2 years before he was diagnosed with this disease. And if he was in pain, and if that disease would have eventually killed him, he would not have the same rights that he had during his process of dying. The fact that my family was allowed to talk about this and he was able to make his own decisions led us to really appreciate the last 4 years that he was with us. That process taught me one thing, and that is if I have or you have a disease that is terminal and I or you are mentally capable, that is not the government's choice as to how you end your life. It shouldn't be. It should be my call. It should be your call as individuals. As a state representative, these things are important. I know the resolution that you're going to be voting on doesn't have the power of policy behind it, but I can tell you that we as statewide representatives really rely a lot on the opinions of communities around the state, and that includes the largest city in New Mexico. So I want to thank Councilors Benton and Councilors Gibson for sponsoring this. I thank you for your time, and I urge you as strongly as possible to please pass that resolution. Mr. President, thank you for your time, sir.
Thank you, Representative, and thank you for driving down from Las Cruces. Appreciate your time. Councilor Davis.
Mr. President and Representative, I know you and Representative Armstrong both, I just want to say thank you for taking the time to do it, particularly as a big round trip. It's a much different process to watch our state legislators work on issues like this, because unlike here, sometimes these bills take 2 or 3 cycles and 2 or 3 years to get through, and it's the ones that really matter to make a difference that seem to and have people and passion behind them that ultimately prevail, and my family personally has a very big interest in being sure that you do, and I appreciate that very much.
Thank you. Next speaker, Lynn Anderson. Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Lynn Anderson. I'm president of NAIOP, the Commercial Real Estate Development Association. President Sanchez and councilors, I'm here to support O1815. Though mainly involved in commercial real estate, my members recognize the important nexus between rooftops, jobs, and retail, office, industrial, and mixed-use properties. They are concerned when a citywide rule, in essence, goes against the wishes of many home buyers. If the market doesn't want a certain kind of property, then it makes no sense for banks, developers, and home builders to invest in building those properties. There are too many other locales which will welcome the expertise and investment in their community. That puts homeowners and home buyers in a conundrum. Buy a home that doesn't fit the needs of your family, or simply drive to qualify for the home you need. Easy enough when we're already close to being a megalopolis with no clear borders between many of our region's governmental entities. Not good for Albuquerque citizens and not good for Albuquerque GRT. I understand that a reasonable compromise may have been worked out, and I commend both sides for that. NAIOP urges passage of O1815. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker, Cody Slama, followed by Art Tenenbaum, followed by Ken Cravens, followed by Janet Greenwald. Welcome.
Hello. I would like to thank all the councilors here tonight and everyone else who showed up. I actually want to bring up a very important issue, and that is that New Mexico is being targeted to host all the nation's high-level nuclear waste. It's a lot of waste. It's over 70,000 tons, and they're trying to build a facility in between Hobbs and Carlsbad. The corporation trying to build it is Holtec International, and the Nuclear Regulatory Commission would be the ones licensing this facility. It's possible that this waste could be coming through Albuquerque because they haven't put out any transport routes. So we're unsure, and I think that it is likely that it could come through Albuquerque, considering it's going to be coming from all over the country and it has to make its way to southeastern New Mexico. So I'd like to thank Pat Davis for actually putting a memorial. The memorial opposing transportation of high-level radioactive waste by a railway through the city of Albuquerque for the purpose of temporary consolidated storage of radioactive waste in New Mexico. This waste is extremely dangerous, and if an accident did happen within our city, and if the waste was somehow exploded or went supercritical, it could create something similar to what happened in Chernobyl, whereas we could not live here because it would be so radioactive. So this memorial is a good way to show the Nuclear Regulatory Commission and other government agencies that we don't want this waste. The Nuclear Issues Study Group has actually been collecting letters, no consent letters. We collected over 1,300 letters from New Mexicans who do not consent to this waste coming through New Mexico. Thank you.
Cody. Next speaker is Art Tannenbaum, followed by Ken Cravens, followed by Janet Greenwald. Welcome, Mr. Tannenbaum.
Oh, hello, Mr. Sanchez, members of the council. I'm disappointed there's no update about the start of the art. I think it was about 45 days ago that it was stated here at a council meeting, about 30 or 45 days out, which is around now, the public would know when the art project would be operational. About 2 years ago, I ran into someone I know on the city bus, the ABQ Ride bus, the City of Albuquerque Transit bus. And she said, "Hi, Art," and "Hi, how you doing, how you doing?" She said, "What is this art thing?" And I said very simply, I said, "Well, basically it's supposed to be a rapid transit bus route up and down Central Avenue." And she made a remark about the construction. She asked me, "How long is it going to take?" And I said, "Well, they're saying," notice how I phrased this, "they're saying it's going to take about 1.5 years." And do you know what she said to me? She said, "It had better be good." So it's been much more than 1.5 years. I got the message over the weekend that we should be optimistic. I guess it's our civic duty for the public to be optimistic. About the most optimistic thing I can say right now is we ought to have plenty of lemonade. We should have more than enough lemonade this summer. Lemonade for neglected children, lemonade for members of the public, $100 million worth of lemonade. So again, the art project is a failure in every aspect, in its design, funding, construction, planning, and operational equipment procurement. It's a failure. We need to fix it.
Please hold your applause. Next speaker is
Mr.
Ken
Chair.
Cravens. Councilor Borrego.
Mr. Tannenbaum, I just wanted to say hello because I've received numerous emails from you, and now I have a face with a name. Thank you.
Mr. Cravens, go ahead and proceed.
Mr. President, members of the council, thank you for having us here this evening. I appreciate the good work that you all had done on the IDO. Both sides coming together, many individuals working towards the middle, trying to find that 50-yard line. And that's the way we get things done in government, as you all know. You all know that I'm also trained to speak all night and say relatively nothing, but I will do that in the next minute and 33 seconds tonight. So the ordinance before you this evening, 1815, is probably something that needs to be done. I'm in support of passage. I believe there's some recommendations from Councilor Jones that I would be in favor of seeing in place of some of the red line amendments that I'd seen in that. Might not be quite ready for prime time on those. Home builders might not be able to react and absorb to dimension changes that are called out in that. And realtors are really concerned about inventory. By the way, I'm the Executive Vice President of Greater Albuquerque Association of Realtors, representing our 3,400 members across our 4-county region. But realtors are really concerned about inventory. It's a nationwide phenomenon that inventory is really down. Anything that stands in the way of building homes in our market is going to impact just every aspect of businesses coming, businesses staying, and businesses thriving here and creating those jobs and those opportunities for economic growth. So would encourage that. And again, thank you for your hard work on this. I think it's been a great project overall. A little dicey at times, but they've come up with a good solution here. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker, Janet Greenwald, followed by Joan Gillis, followed by Carolina Yanni, followed by Simon Polakowski. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, President Sanchez and members of the council. I'm here to support Memorial Number 1, which considers the many problems attached to bringing high-level waste into our state. I just came back from hearings in southeastern New Mexico, and I was surprised to see the almost overwhelming opposition of residents, pecan farmers, dairy people, and the oil industry. The oil industry cited a recent report out of Texas which shows that the very ground where this high-level waste is supposed to be shallowly buried is rising and subsiding, perhaps due to fracking in the area. But the oil companies said that even God wouldn't have enough money to repay them if something went wrong. And they were quite articulate. And then there's the transportation. It'll all be by train. These casks are very heavy and dangerous. When my husband and I sit on our porch in the near South Valley on these summery evenings, we hear that whistle blowing. And I think a lot of us do. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity and considering your consideration of Memorial Number 1.
Thank you, Janet. Next speaker is Joan Gillis. Welcome.
Good evening, councilors. My name is Joan Gillis, and I am here to ask for your support on 2 of tonight's agenda items. One I cannot believe you wouldn't support, and the other a little more controversial. I am asking for your support for Councilor Harris's R1819, creating a task force to identify solutions to the problem of balloons landing during Balloon Fiesta. The Fiesta is an economic boom to Albuquerque, and it would be a shame to jeopardize it by not having enough landing space. I have heard for the 5 years that I have lived here that landings are a problem, and I'm delighted to see that the city is proposing to do something before it is too late. The second item I urge your support on is R1821, which goes by many names, and I like to call Death with Dignity. I would like for our voice to be heard in the legislature in the hopes that it will motivate our legislators to move on this whatever. Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Carolina Yanni, followed by Simon Polakowski, followed by Robin Seidel. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, councilors. And my name is Carolina Yanni. I'm a New Mexico licensed psychologist, and I just want to thank you for supporting R1821 about end-of-life options. I'm a past president of the New Mexico Psychological Association, and our association has supported this concept now for several years. So we'd appreciate your support for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Simon Polakowski.
Councilor President, Council, 2 minutes is not enough. People coming up here are very concerned about things. I would have liked, if I had a program on Channel 27, I would have spent an hour commenting on this op-ed in the Journal by Dr. Emil Nakle about Syria. Dr. Nakle had received his PhD from American University, and he talks about chemical attacks in Syria. American University is the home, the birthplace of the American chemical mass weapons research. In fact, the area where these weapons were first developed during the First World War has been highly poisoned by those actions. In fact, it's called Spring Valley. It's very interesting. The South Korean ambassador's residence sits upon what they believe a pit that the soldiers back then, over 100 years ago, called Hades, hell. We have our own problems here, but again, 2 minutes is not enough. I hear people coming up asking for a memorial about waste transportation. New Mexico has enough waste, but 2 minutes is not enough for people to present their case. These people that come up here are highly dedicated. They spend unpaid time, their own time, researching, and as the woman said, one of them said, she drove to southeastern New Mexico with her husband and was amazed at the outcome, the outcoming of people. We need a public access channel which will inform the public of things that the local papers won't or refuse to. We need a place where the average person can get their point across to the, are allowed at least to get to speak to the public. Thank you.
Thank you. Robin Seidel, followed by Garrett Price, followed by Bob Ellie. Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you. Good evening, President Sanchez, council members. I too am here to talk about high-level nuclear waste coming through our communities and want to commend Councilor Davis for introducing the Memorial 1. I sincerely hope that you will all support it. We are facing as many as 10,000 shipments of nuclear fuel rods coming through our rail lines if the NRC approves all the phases that Holtec International has requested. And the expected releases that we will all experience, not to speak of any possible accident because our rail lines are not in the best of shape at this time, are quite concerning. And so we really hope that you will help us protect the people of New Mexico and support Memorial 1. We hope that you will go even further with resolutions and preventing this waste from coming through Albuquerque in the long run. It's a very serious and very dangerous proposal that we are facing as a state and as a city. And I greatly appreciate your consideration for this memorial. And thanks again to Pat for putting it forth. So thanks, folks. Yeah.
Thank you. Garrett Price. Welcome.
Welcome. Thanks for having me here. Good evening, President Sanchez, members of City Council. My name is Garrett Price. I am president of Price Land and Development Group. I'm also a past president for the Home Builders Association, in which I'm here speaking on their behalf this evening in support of Bill 01815, adopting the amendments to the IDO, as well as there's a proposed floor amendment being sponsored this evening that we're in support of and have worked closely with Councilor Jones and Councilor Sanchez, and we ask for your support. And in fact, this evening we have several members of the HBA that represent production builders, custom builders, semi-custom bankers, you name it, architects, engineers, and I'd like to ask that they stand up tonight to show their support. Thank you for being here. Again, we ask that you support the amendment as well as the proposed floor amendment sponsored by Councilor Jones, Councilor Sanchez. We've worked closely for the last 4 weeks with their staff, planning staff, and we applaud your efforts. I feel like it's a great compromise, and again, we ask for your support. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Price. Bob Ellie, followed by Silviana Diaz DeVille, followed by Patrick Atencio, who will be our last speaker. Go and proceed.
Good evening. I'm Bob Bailey. Good evening, President Sanchez and council members. I speak in support of Memorial 1 also. The late Senator Domenici said, well, if New Mexicans accepted WIP, we would be doing our part and we wouldn't have to take any more radioactive waste. New Mexico has uranium mining out west. One of the largest nuclear waste spills in the history of the country happened out there at Church Rock. We have Los Alamos, which contaminates the north end of our state. We have WHIP that has releases that have people have inhaled plutonium, the most deadly substance in the world. And I incredibly support what you're doing with the memorial. I think that the state should take a much stronger stance. You know, they stopped nuclear waste dumping in other facilities that weren't suitable, and there is no reason that New Mexico should accept this waste. We've done our part. And the politicians in the past that got whip in here, they should stand by what they said and not let any more come into our state. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Silviana Diaz DeVille. The last speaker will be Patrick Atencio. Welcome.
My name is Patrick Atencio, and you know, I believe in a transparency through the government and the police force, and I go down to 5th and Slate and 6th and Slate all the time across from the courthouse, and I always see police officers parked illegally where it says don't park from here to the corner and stuff, and I call and I get a runaround every time. So 2 times now I've had time to wait for somebody to actually come, and it's always been at least 45 minutes. And the first time we had one of our parking enforcement officers write a ticket and put it on the police car that was there. And then, when I got to my car and then drove back around, there was no ticket on that officer's car. So we have a corrupt traffic enforcement. Last time, there was 3 police cars that were parked illegally in that very same spot about 2 weeks ago, last Thursday, or 2 Thursdays ago. And I called traffic enforcement. I got the runaround from 242 cops. I called them 3 times before I could get to traffic enforcement. And then I went over there and I told them, you know, I asked who they were and took video every time. So the one was a supervisor police officer from here to corner, and then the other ones were for permit-only parking. This time they parked and they ticketed every one of them. So, and then I got pulled over by a Sandoval County cop, and I called 911, and he took off. I showed him my phone. He just took off, so I followed him. So I don't know why I got a ticket for intimidating an officer when I was just trying to hold him accountable. Is that police clearancy there or transparency? I don't know. It's kind of wrong. And to have city land and not put amendments for public restrooms that's going to be given over to private things is wrong also. We have too many homeless people here. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. That concludes general public comments. We are now on agenda item 11, announcements. Councilor Peña.
Thank you, Mr. President. There will be a Finance and Government Operations Committee meeting on Monday, May 14th at 5 p.m. in the Council Committee Room, on the 9th floor.
Councilor Borrego.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There will be a Land Use Planning and Zoning Committee meeting on Wednesday, May 16th at 5 p.m. in the Council Committee Room on the 9th floor.
Councilor Jones.
Thank you, Mr. President. There will be a committee of the whole meeting on Thursday, May 10th, and another on Thursday, May 17th at 5 p.m. here in the Vincent E. Griego Chambers.
And there will be a Volterra Public Improvement District Board meeting on Monday, May the 21st at 10 a.m. in the DMD Conference Room, 7th floor, room 7096. And before we go to public hearings, item 12, I'm going to move the agenda around just a bit here, and I'm going to move item R-21 as the next item on the agenda, and that is going to be Councilor Gibson and Councilor Benton. Councilor Gibson, Councilor Benton.
Okay,
Councilor
well,
Gibson.
thank you, Mr. President. So we are co-sponsoring this. It's R21, urging the New Mexico State Legislature to support and enact medical aid in dying, also known as the End of Life Options Act. I'm going to move a due pass on this, and
We have a motion and a second by Councilor Benton. Councilor Gibson.
and I don't know, Councilor Benton may have words for this as well.
Councilor Benton.
Well, I thank Councilor Gibson for co-sponsoring this. I I had a personal experience with this. Representative McCamley mentioned that he had as well. And just last year, I had a member of my family choose the option to end his life in California. I think he was right around the 2000th person who did it in 2 years, the first 2 years of that bill. And so when I saw that Representative Armstrong had this bill last time, I reached out to her and said, I want to do anything I can to help you with this and to tell my own story. But just briefly, my father-in-law was a Holocaust survivor. He had an incredible life. Born in Poland, escaped the Warsaw Ghetto, went east into Russia, served in the Polish unit of the Russian army during World War II, came to the U.S. and made a new life for himself in New Jersey and then ultimately in California. Anyway, we knew that he was very ill. He told us in advance that he had done all the paperwork and done all the proper arrangements to exercise this option in California. And so we thought it might happen. We didn't know when, but we expected it someday. And then sure enough, one Wednesday, we got the call from his son saying that Boris was going to exercise that option that weekend. So we got our plane tickets, we went out. I have to say, I had trepidation about it. I was, it made me nervous, the whole idea to some extent. But when I got there and I saw how happy he was, it was remarkable. And from then on, we had a wonderful time over a couple days, and we really had a chance to say our goodbyes while he was still in a good frame of mind, and his body was shot, but he was in a very good sense of himself and his decision. And it ended up being a really moving and loving experience. There are all sorts of safeguards that he had and hurdles that he and his son had to jump through to prepare to do this, but and there's nothing light about such a decision. And I think if we do it right, we can do it properly here. But it was moving, and I came away convinced that this is very good and progressive policy. And it was for California, and I think it can be here too. So, again, I want to thank Representative Armstrong and Councilor Gibson for supporting this, but I know we'll have some people that want to speak about it. Thank you.
And we have 4 individuals that are signed up to speak for our -18-21. The first speaker is Maria Otero, followed by Robert Swartz, followed by Deborah Armstrong, and the last speaker will be Elizabeth Whitefield. Welcome.
President Sanchez, council members, my name is Maria Otero, co-founder of Nuestra Salud, a community organization whose mission is to reduce health disparities affecting Hispanic communities in New Mexico. We work to engage our community in participating in their health care. I also serve as a National Latino Leadership Council that works on end-of-life option issues and works to ensure that our Hispanic community is represented and that our cultural traditions around death are shared with our healthcare providers. As part of our culture and religion, we make health decisions together as a family. So I am here to support Resolution 1821 because dignity in dying is important to me, and I believe having medical aid in dying is an option at the end of life is a basic human right for all. Almost 8 weeks ago, my father-in-law, Pablo, a devoted Catholic, passed away from metastatic cancer in his bones. The last few months of his life, he experienced extreme pain, incontinence, weakness in his legs and arms, and because he had high levels of calcium in his blood, he was nauseous and vomiting and couldn't eat, and he had painful constipation, and he was experiencing confusion. But all through it all, he was grounded in his faith to the last moments of his life. Today, he will be very proud to know that I was speaking on his behalf about his desires to have a dignified death. I understand that this end-of-life care option may not be for everybody, but as a Catholic who respects other people's faiths, I believe it's not for me to judge someone else. Until one walks in another person's shoes, it's not for anyone to stand in their way of this compassionate option being available for someone else. I urge you to support Resolution 821. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Otero. Robert Schwartz, followed by Deborah Armstrong, followed by Judge Elizabeth Whitefield.
Thank you very much, members of the City Council. I'm Rob Schwartz on the faculty at UNM Law School, where I've been teaching health law and health policy for the last 40 years. I'm here to thank you for considering Resolution 1821 and asking you to support it. New Mexico has been a leader in allowing individuals to make their own health care decisions since New Mexico adopted the Health Care Decisions Act now 20 years ago. It was the first state to adopt the Uniform Health Care Decisions Act. Virtually every state has copied New Mexico since that time 20 years ago, and now every state has adopted the principle that we first adopted in New Mexico, which was every competent adult gets to make his own important life decisions. That's a decision for the individual, not for the state, not for the government, not for anybody else. And I think there are two reasons that New Mexico was the first state to do this. One is the respect that we have for the cultural and religious diversity within our state. That diversity is really important to us. And second is the strong libertarian streak that we have that says that we get to make our own decisions and that we get to apply our values in making those decisions. Today, most people west of the Rockies, in the Rockies or west, have the choice of aid and dying. They don't have to choose that. Most people don't choose aid and dying, but it's a choice that's available to most people in this part of the United States. Not so true in other parts of the country, but it is true in this part of the country. It's true in Oregon, in Washington, in California, in Colorado, in Montana, as of a couple weeks ago in Hawaii, and there is no reason that someone from New Mexico should have to travel to one of those states to be able to choose a death with dignity and be able to choose aid and dying. That's a choice that ought to be available to New Mexicans in New Mexico as well. I urge you to help create access to legal medically assisted dying, to medical aid and dying in New Mexico, and to pass this resolution, send it on to the state legislature. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Deborah Armstrong?
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the council. Thank you for hearing this and considering this. I'm State Representative Deborah Armstrong, and I'm the sponsor of this legislation during last year's legislative session. I have been working with individuals who are at the end of their life for more than 40 years. And I have, both as a professional and involved in hospice, but as a friend, as a family member, I have done end-of-life caregiving. I've moved in with friends for the last weeks of their lives to do caregiving, and it is not always easy to control and provide comfort as much as we would like to, just depending on the status of their disease. I also have two immediate family members, my daughter and her father, who both have stage 4 cancer with metastasis in their lungs. And this is something very dear and important to them. But I also want to tell you, as the sponsor of this legislation, this is for adults who are terminally ill, who are competent to make the decision, who have been, and who can self-administer, who have been deemed terminally ill and competent by 2 physicians. to providers. So they have been affirmed to be terminally ill, competent, self-administered. It's not, this is not Dr. Kevorkian. It's not an IV, an injection by somebody else. This is somebody who can take the medication orally themselves. And so I urge your support, and I stand available to answer any questions should you have them. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. The last speaker will be Judge Elizabeth Whitefield. Welcome, Judge.
Good evening, counselors. Thank you. I hope you can understand me. I have a trach tube. I'm here. I'm a retired judge, district court. I am here in support of the resolution for 3 reasons. One is I am the face of one of the users of that bill. I may well be using it. I'm not a quitter. I have had lots of cancers. I've had breast cancer twice, throat cancer twice. I've had lung cancer, and I've also had leukemia twice. Right now, I have metastasized breast cancer in my lung and in my liver. I know my death is going to be painful. They don't know how long, whether it's going to be weeks or months, but it's going to be painful. I cannot talk like you. I cannot walk like you. I cannot eat like you. I have feeding tubes, and I can't do the work that I enjoyed. Please, this resolution and having it made into state law allows me to have the dignity that cancer has taken away in other areas of my life. I don't want to die slowly. My second point is I don't want to die alone. Right now, it is a criminal. It is a criminal act for my husband to be there to assist in the suicide or to have my family and friends. I just don't want that to happen for me and similarly situated people. So in passing this resolution, it is really the humane thing to do. It speaks to our people, it speaks to our legislature, and it allows competent people a dignified way to die. Thank you all.
Thank you, Judge. Councilor Borrego.
Judge, I want to thank you for your courage for coming up, Judge. I want to thank you for your courage for coming up, and I wish you the best. I'm also a cancer survivor, so I probably did not have cancer as, you know, to the degree that you did, but I very much sympathize with what you're saying, and I very much appreciate your courage tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Are there any other questions or comments from this council? Councilor Davis? Councilor Benton? No, we're not quite ready to close. I have a couple of comments. Okay. Yeah, please. Thank you, Councilor Benton. On August 30th of 1986, my dad was also terminally ill and passed away from cancer. And the previous 5 months to 7 months before that were very painful, not only for him, but for the entire family, because of the suffering that we saw and the suffering that he went through. And every day he woke up and tried as hard as he could, just like I'm very impressed with the judge here tonight to give her testimony and what she has gone through. And I know probably 3 weeks before he passed away, his sister had also died of cancer, and he made the comment, "I wish that was me in that casket." A few days later, an airplane went down at the Grand Canyon, and he made the same statement, "I wish that was me on that plane." So I saw how he suffered for such a long time. I mean, he had the cancer for 9 years, but that last 6 months of his life, he really had no quality of life, and he was just surviving. But I want to thank the sponsors of this legislation, Councilor Gibson and Councilor Benton, for your work, because I truly believe, and Representative Armstrong, I want to thank you because you have dealt with this directly with many of the families that you have worked closely with. But I believe that people should have the right, if they choose to die with dignity. And hopefully, in the near future, the New Mexico legislature will give residents of this state that opportunity. Councilor Gibson and then Councilor Benton to close.
Thank you. Just a couple of thoughts. First of all, we haven't mentioned Elizabeth Armijo, who was really instrumental in putting this together, and she's working really hard on this. So wanted to thank her for all of her efforts. And something I was thinking about, hearing people talk about this bill, this isn't anything that's new. People in this world have been, finding the end of their lives, and hastening that in a lot of different ways for thousands of years. But, now we, live with the advances that they could never have even considered back then. Technology and medicines and equipment and so many things that are now available to us that can give someone who is in their last days a peaceful passing, a peaceful and dignified passing. And, it's up to everybody. Each person can make that decision for themselves. There's really absolutely no, I certainly can't think of any reason that anybody would want to suggest that to anybody. It's really very personal, that thing that only individuals can make for themselves. But so I'm very happy to co-sponsor this, and I certainly hope that we can pass it unanimously. Thank you.
I'm going to go to Councillor Jones, then we'll go to Councillor Benton to close. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, and I'm sorry I didn't ask this sooner, but this is on my mind and on my heart. The judge made a very strong point, and I think that when we think about being forced to die alone so we can die as we want to die, and yet we can't share that with our friends or have our family surround us, because now we would make them criminals, and they could be charged with murder, and that's wrong. You can go back, as was said, thousands of years, and the Native Americans walked out into the forest or into the mountains and died. The Eskimos have always walked out across an iceberg and died when they know it's time and they don't want to suffer or be around anymore or cause problems. I think we all have a right to do that. Again, as was said, this is not everyone's choice, but this is one of the biggest choices we make in life, and I think we have a right to do it with dignity and with our loved ones around us. As Councillor Benton said, it can be a wonderful sharing moment with your family, or it can be a horrible memory of your death for the family members who have to sit and watch you die and suffer unnecessarily. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Benton to close.
Thanks, everyone who came to speak. And just to be really clear, no one will be made to do this without consenting and initiating it themselves and doing it with a good mind. So people who might have Alzheimer's, that sort of thing, they're not going to be able to exercise such an option. Also, just a point that I think that this concept has enjoyed high support amongst Americans, including a 2017 Gallup poll putting support at around 73%, and I think it's similar numbers here in New Mexico. But just to reiterate, I think this is compassionate and humane policy, and it does provide a wonderful closure to people who are suffering physically, and just their quality of life. And this was the case with my relative. Their quality of life had diminished, and this was a person with a wonderful love for life. He did not make this choice lightly, and that was very clear. But and it was a somber time, but at the same time, just surprisingly uplifting to be a part of it. I just want to say that was my personal experience. But I think two other of our major, at least two other New Mexico cities are taking a similar action in support of action by the legislature. So I urge your support.
Thank you, Councillor Benton. We have a motion and a second on the floor to approve R-18-21. All those in favor, raise your hand and say yes. Yes? Opposed? That carries unanimously. Thank you. Okay, we are now under item 12. We're going to go back to the agenda where we left off prior to moving the agenda around. And we are on item A, AC-5. Martina Mersmer appeals the Board of Appeals.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry I have to, I'm sorry, Mr. President, I'm sorry. I need to recuse myself from this.
Okay.
I was visited by some residents who live nearby there in Councilor Harris's district, and they gave me the entire lay of the land, and I know more than what I ever wanted to know. So I'm sorry, I'm going to have to recuse myself. However, there was a reason that they came to me, and they were looking for some help. I couldn't give them help, and I told them that. But I did ask them, are you okay? I mean, is this, were you?
Let's go and ask our legal.
Yeah, Mr. President, Councilor Gibson, with your recusal statement, I would urge sort of limiting the recount of the interaction that you had with those parties.
The interaction that they had with an employee.
Yeah, Mr. President, Councilor Gibson, I think to preserve the record, you know, anything that could be planted in the minds of the body, if you will, that could sway the direction that they would vote on this relative to the parties involved, I think would be inappropriate.
Then we
right
should
now.
talk about it later, because that is a problem that I have to recuse myself, and out of no fault of the residents. So anyway.
Okay, Councilor Gibson, thank you for that disclosure. Councilor Harris.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm just going to read a quick statement. I'm recusing from consideration of AC 18-5, which deals with the zoning aspect of a community center in my district. My recusal should not be taken to suggest any lack of support for the project, but because of my prior involvement, I will not participate in the zoning aspect in order to help preserve all appearances of fairness by the council as a disinterested body in considering the appeal.
Thank you, Councilor Harris. You've been recused, along with Councilor Gibson. We will now go to Mr. Melendres to explain the appeal.
Thank you, Mr. President. Council, this is an appeal. The issue here is whether or not a community center should be conditionally permitted within Singing Arrow Park. The standard being whether or not that particular use would be injurious to the area or otherwise injured by the surrounding land uses. Both the zoning hearing examiner and the Board of Appeals approved this particular conditional use permit. However, that decision was appealed by an area resident to the City Council, who contends that the community center will in fact cause injury to the area. The council referred this matter to its land use hearing officer, who reviewed determinations of the ZHE and the BOA and recommends that the conditional use permit for the community center be upheld. Specifically, the LUHO determined that the community center would not detrimentally reduce green space in the area or have a negative impact on crime, traffic, parking, or a nearby cultural resource. Accordingly, the land use hearing officer recommends that the appeal be denied and that the ZHE and BOA be affirmed and that the conditional use permit for the community center be approved. You won't hear from the parties tonight. If you have questions, I'll do my best to answer those from the record. You're considering only whether to accept or reject the recommendation of your land use hearing officer at this time.
Councilor Jones.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think all the information that we had was very clear, and I'd like to make a motion to accept the LUHO recommendation and findings.
We have a motion and a second to accept the LUHO's recommendations and findings. Are there any questions? See none. All those in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Yes. Those opposed say no. That carries unanimously. We are now on the second appeal. That's AC6. Mr. Melendres.
Yeah, Mr. President, and we probably
Ms.
need
Winter.
to bring everybody else back in here, but I'm going to recuse myself on this issue.
Okay, Councilor Winter has been recused on this item, which is AC6. And let's bring in back Councilor Jones. And also, Councilor Jones here, Councilor Gibson, and Councilor Harris.
Want me to say anything?
Let's go, I move to table this item till Councilor Jones comes back.
Gibson.
Gibson, excuse me. Do we have a second? Second. We have a motion and a second to table AC6. All those in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Yes, opposed? That carries. Let's go and go to approvals. That is item 13. This is EC 379, status FY17, Goal 3, Objective 6, to provide an assessment of methods to accelerate the process of street reconstruction and rehabilitation design and implementation, particularly with regards to smaller special projects initiated by the council. I move receipt be noted. We have a motion and a second by Councillor Jones. Any questions? Councillor Benton.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to thank friends at DMD for taking this on. I know it's been discussed over the years. I think looking at the history of DMD, they did do probably more of these kind of in-house engineering projects in the past. They still do minor projects today, and we appreciate their help with projects generally under $100,000 of construction cost. But this was a concern, and it was really a concern that I did raise a while back, and really raised not in terms of being critical of the department, but rather just to try to do the best we can with the throughput of the department. Sometimes it is, I'll just put it this way. Sometimes it is frustrating when we do have to go through a private contractor, and there's all that business of having to put an RFP out for a private consultant, and then get a contract signed, get them on board, get them up to speed with the situation, as opposed to sometimes situations where our in-house folks understand the project very well. And then also cost control is something of concern. So these are the reasons we brought this up. I think if councilors want to hear about this in any detail, we can hear from DMD, but I'm satisfied for the most part that they're doing their best with these outside consultants, and it keeps the department fairly quick on their feet to have the private consultants available.
I believe Ms. Yara has a comment.
Yeah, yes, Mr. President, thank you. Because we know that this report was provided for the purpose of assessing the cost of certain construction, I just wanted to clarify by request that one of the projects that was listed as being completed by city funds in Councilor Borrego's district, that would be SAD 228. Just wanted to clarify that although the money was fronted by the city through bonds that were issued, ultimately the cost of those improvements would be borne by the property owners through SAD assessments. And I just wanted to clarify that so it could avoid any misleading, to avoid misleading anybody in the public. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Benton.
Yeah, just that reminded me, just to make clear, we did, during the process of talking about these issues with DMD, council did, I think, informally request a breakdown of how the road rehabilitation projects have been divided amongst the city. And I think a large part of the projects were in District 2, without question, and I don't think that was any favoritism towards District 2, but I think it's a reflection of something we talked about a little while back when the new administration came in, about just equity and need and backlog and age of existing infrastructure. And I think it's going to be the nature of this kind of work that some of the older parts of the city, such as my district, Councilor Harris's district, Councilor Gibson's district, where and probably Councilor Davis's, somewhat probably also on the west side. Some of the older settled areas have the biggest backlog of old roadways that are just not modern roadways. So we passed, I appreciated the administration good help with that. We passed an amendment to our budget priorities about that, about equity versus equality. And it really wasn't about trying to make reparations or anything like that. It was really just acknowledging that some parts of the city have a bigger backlog and older infrastructure than others. So I think that's reflected in that chart that was in the staff write-up. But otherwise, if there are no other questions.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor for EC 379. All those in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Yes, opposed, say no. That carries unanimously. Let's go back to public hearings, item B. That is AC 6, Dayan Hochman of Roybal, Mack, and Cordova. Agents for Larry Tucker appeal the decision of the Environmental Planning Commission. Councilor Winter has recused himself. Mr. Melendres, do you want to explain?
Mr. President, just a matter of bookkeeping, if we could make a motion to take that off the table.
I'd like to make a motion to take this item off the table, AC-6.
Second.
We have a motion in 2 seconds. All those in favor signify by saying yes. Yes, opposed? That carries unanimously. We're back on the bill. Mr. Melendres.
Thank you, Mr. President. Council, the issue in this appeal is whether an existing conditionally permitted bed and breakfast within the Huning Highlands Sector Development Plan should also be specifically authorized through its zoning to host special events at the site. The site is currently zoned SU2MR, which is mixed residential within the Huning Highlands Sector Development Plan, and the request is to change that zoning to SU2, SU1 for bed and breakfast to include special events. Since the B&B is already in place, the zoning would effectively serve to add the special events and potentially remedy an issue as to whether or not the existing conditional use permit covers all of the properties. A neighbor across the rear alley from the B&B appealed the EPC's approval of that zone map amendment, arguing that it wasn't adequately justified or in compliance with the zoning code, and was concerned about the relative intrusiveness of larger events such as weddings that could be hosted at the property. The council referred this matter to its land use hearing officer, who recommends that the appeal be granted and that the zone map amendment be denied, effectively overruling the determination of the Environmental Planning Commission. Specifically, the land use hearing officer determined that the EPC's decision was not supported by the record. For example, the EPC found that the ZMA here would contribute to the distinct historical community, protect and enhance the character of the existing neighborhood, and preserve and promote historic buildings without disrupting neighborhood uses. However, the LUHO determined that those particular policies are at least equally as applicable to the current zoning designation, which already permits the bed and breakfast. So in other words, the findings and policies don't support the distinction between bed and breakfast with special events. The LUHO also identified some technical defects relative to the zoning code and recommends that this ZMA be denied because it was not adequately justified and it's not clear whether it satisfied certain technical zoning requirements. As with the last appeal, you will not hear from the parties tonight. If you have questions, I'll do my best to try to address those from the record. If you accept the land use hearing officer's recommendation, the decision will be final to deny the zone map amendment. If you reject it, we can schedule this matter for a subsequent hearing.
Councilor Davis and then Councilor Benton.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Melendres, if you would just speak up just a little bit. I hear some people in the back giving us that signal. Mr. Melendres, can you just clarify a process question for me here? I read that the LUHO determined that the EPC's decision was not supported by the record and findings. And if I understand, were this council wanting to essentially send this back to EPC to consider new evidence that might allow it to make different findings or adjust the record, we would simply have to reject that, have a new hearing, and if the council thought that that was appropriate, we could send it back at that point. Is that a right by process sort of?
Mr. President, Councilor Davis, that is exactly right.
Thank you.
Councilor Benton.
Mr. Melendres, so is there a definition for special events within the zoning code?
Mr. President, Councilor Benton, not that I'm aware of. I know that the zoning enforcement office went out and cited this particular site for hosting special events after getting a zoning enforcement call and made the determination that that use was at least specific enough aside from bed and breakfast to require additional zoning action.
So, I mean, a special event could be just, I suppose, a child's birthday party, but it could also be a big, happy and loud wedding.
Mr. President, it would appear that, yeah, the nature of the event, you could have quite a degree of variation.
Yeah, that's kind of a concern and something I'm struggling with here. Also, just a quick question, since these do involve the whole principle of what's good for the neighborhood or what may be bad for the neighborhood, did the neighborhood associations weigh in on this?
Mr. President, the record does include a number of letters of support from residents in the area, but I do not recall seeing in the record a specific letter from the neighborhood association.
Okay, thank you. And councilors, just you know, the business of weddings and of celebrations is a pretty big business in our town, you know, and apparently that was a big consideration of the EPC in their decision, that it was, I think if I could characterize it, it was good for business and good for entrepreneurialism and so forth. And this B&B has been there for quite a long time. I, though, do feel that this is a somewhat complex issue, especially given this whole business of what it means to have a special permit. What does that really look like? Are we talking about, I think we're talking about with a no limit on the number of special events that could occur. This isn't going to happen, but in theory, they could be happening every day once such a special use zoning is approved, correct?
Mr. President, that's correct. The EPC did not impose standards or conditions that would limit that.
All right. So, and you know, just on that topic of these kind of special events and these kind of facilities, I think probably many of us have heard complaints, not about this, but about just similar activities where noise is generated and so forth. Councilors, I would like for us to hear this appeal. And so I'm going to go ahead and hear from other councilors after I make this motion, but I'm going to move that we reject the Lujo recommendation and hear the case.
We have a motion and a second on the floor. Are there any other comments? Councilor Harris.
So if we hear the case, we're going to take evidence also at that point in time? Not necessarily?
Mr. President, Councilor Harris, the council's rules sort of severely limit it in its ability to easily take new evidence. And so the purview of that is probably more appropriate within the EPC. And to the extent that the council is entertaining this idea of a remand, the planning department did submit a memo, and it's in your record, to that point of remand, and thought that it might be helpful, if that's the direction the council is going in, to send it back to the EPC, perhaps as you know, an example of how to make their findings better.
And I would like to comment on this. I will not support this motion. I believe that the land use hearing officer did not err in this particular case. My biggest concern is right now with the new IDO going into place beginning May 17th, bed and breakfasts can have up to, I think, 6 or 7 events annually. And I think that's appropriate. Because in this particular case, this individual was given a warning, and that's why he appealed this particular case to the council and went through this process. But I just believe if we set a precedence that would allow more bed and breakfasts to do these things, it's going to be detrimental to residents across this community, because we will be seeing more of these events take place. Like you said, Councilor Bedden, a birthday party is okay, but you may have weddings 2 or 3 a weekend. And that could be a problem, I think, you know, for many of the residents that are looking to keep residential communities residential, and could create an uproar, because they will be able to have 7 events, which I think is fair and equitable and more than adequate. But I will not be supporting this motion. Councilor Benton.
And thank you, Mr. President, and I fully respect that decision on your part. My intent certainly is not to have it go one way or the other, but rather that we have the ability to really delve into this a little bit, just something like the definition of a special event. Furthermore, if for some reason, after hearing the arguments, we decided to remand this, we'd be in the position to do so. You know, there's no predetermined outcome, obviously, of us hearing this, but I do think it's worthy of a hearing.
Council Vice President Harris?
And thank you, Mr. President. And I think I'm going to support Councilor Benton's motion, but for the reason that I don't know what the answer is, and I don't know how I'm going to vote after we hear it. But I think now and then we should just hear these things for ourselves, especially in this particular case. I know David Campbell, the planning director, has asked us to remand it, and I'm not sure if I'm going to agree with him ultimately, but I think I'd like, if we reject the Lujo's recommendations, then at that point in time, we can decide to affirm him and adopt his findings, even after, isn't that true, Mr. Melendres?
Mr. President, Councilor Harris, that's correct.
So we can, so by not adopting his conclusions and findings now, we can still adopt them later. So for that reason, I think I'd like to hear it. And I am interested in some question that sort of was driving around the neighborhood on Google Earth, and I think this is an interesting issue. And I also wonder how long this particular bed and breakfast has been doing events, because that might affect whether or not, it really is interfering with the neighborhood or not, and so forth. And I don't know if that's in the record or not. And I don't know if we need to, if those sorts of questions need to be asked, if I can ask them when it comes up on the appeal, or maybe the folks who are going to be defending and pursuing this appeal might want to have some sort of agreement on what kind of facts they can enlarge the record with, if that's necessary.
Councilor Davis and Councilor Jones. Councilor Jones?
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm going to take a little different stance on this. I don't necessarily like what we have here, but I do believe that the council should send this back to the EPC and see if they want to adjust their findings. We can do that, right? We can remand it to EPC, let them take another look at it. They can ask questions. They can do more than we can with a trained, they're all basically trained, and planning does a good job of educating them and what works and what doesn't work. And then if it comes back from EPC, it comes in front of us again, then we'll at least have some good conversations and some good options to look at, instead of just taking this on now without all the information that we could get. So I would, if Councilor Benton, if you would not mind, I would like to go for substitute that recommendation. Thank you.
Councilor Benton?
So thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Councilor Jones. I'm not opposed to that, but I think procedurally, I think we're kind of, we've got some hands tied somewhat. It could be argued that we could just immediately do this right now, but we may be better off going, at least having a fairly cursory debate up here and try to identify what the big questions are that we're sending back to the EPC, if that's where we go. But
Also,
Mr. Melendres might be able to.
Councilor Borrego?
Mr. Melendres, the question that I have is, what was the original application that was filed on this? What did it say? Did it say just for a bed and breakfast request, or how was it filed?
Mr. President, Councilor Borrego, the bed and breakfast can already happen and is happening under the conditional use permit. So the nature of the request has been, since the EPC considered it, SU2 for bed and breakfast and to include special events. So it's a combination of uses under the zoning code's SU1 zone.
Excuse me, Councilor Davis, I can't hear her. I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Mr. President, Councilor Borrego, the request that came in from the applicants was to go from the MR zone, where they are presently permitted to do a bed and breakfast conditionally, in which they have been doing since 2008, to go to SU2, SU1 for bed and breakfast and to include special events. So it would be there.
So the original application did have a venue for special events?
Mr. President.
Or in the conditional use, it did have that. Because the way that I see this is the SU1 for bed and breakfast is a particular use, and the request to include special events is another use. So that's why I'm asking the question. I'm trying to define sort of, what exactly was requested in that conditional use?
Mr. President, Councilor Borrego, the conditional use permit was for the bed and breakfast. When the zoning complaint was filed, the zoning office went out and evaluated the use and identified that the special events were not included as part of their approval through the conditional use
So
permit.
the applicant did not request a special, special events until after they had been cited by zoning, is that correct?
Mr. President, Councilor Borrego, that is correct.
Okay. Probably for that reason, I would have to vote to uphold the Lujo's recommendation, because we are actually asking the Planning Commission to change the request. And I think that is up to the applicant. It's not up to the city to review that. I mean, if they had originally come in with a bed and breakfast, the conditional use for a bed and breakfast and special event, then I could support it. But we're asking for it. We are essentially, as a city, asking for them to amend their request. And I have a serious issue with that. Thank you.
Councilor Harris?
Well, actually, I don't think that's what's happening. I think they had a request that was granted, and then they expanded their use, and there was a complaint, so now they filed a second application, which asked for a different use or a different...
Yes, Councilor Harris, but what I'm saying...
Excuse me, I'm not done. And also, I just want to be clear about something, is that when we reject the recommendation and findings of the Lujo, we have to have a hearing, don't we?
Mr. President, Councilor Harris, that's correct. The zoning code is really specific. You can amend the findings, you can amend certain findings, so long as they're consistent with the recommendation. If you reject the recommendation, you're having a hearing. You can't do a direct remand.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Harris, what I was saying is that the reason that they're amending their request is to include the special event is because the city actually cited them. And that's the issue that I have, is that, we prompted them to amend their request.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor to reject Lujo's recommendation, in which this case and this matter would be scheduled for a full hearing at the next council meeting. We have a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor, raise your hand and say yes. Yes. 5 votes in the affirmative. Those against, say no. On a 5 to, would it go, all those in favor, say yes again? Yes. 5 in the affirmative. Those opposed, say no. 3 in the negative. That carries. There will be a full hearing, and that date is scheduled for?
Mr. President, it's May 21st.
Okay, that'll be scheduled for May 21st. At this time, we are going to take a dinner break and return in approximately 35 minutes.